This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Very good morning and welcome to News 9. I am Karthik Malhotra. On the show today, we are tracking what Moody's is saying about Pakistan's debt default ratings. Moody's has downgraded Pakistan, saying that Pakistan cannot afford a war with India. Meanwhile, News 9 also gets you an exclusive conversation with MobiKwik's Upasana Thakur. Stay tuned. You are watching Morning Brief at 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. First up, let's look at the headlines we're tracking for you this Tuesday morning. India undertakes civil defense preparedness. Mock drills scheduled to begin tomorrow. Meanwhile, Home Secretary is scheduled to commence a meeting on these mock drills at 10:45 a.m. today. Moody's has downgraded Pakistan, saying Pakistan cannot afford a war with India. Meanwhile, India's economy to be pretty much unaffected in case of a hostile attack. And with the IMF meeting scheduled on May 9th, India will up its effort to thwart the $7 billion bailout for Pakistan's economy. Former India Executive Director at the International Monetary Fund, KV Subramanian's exit has been a decision of the Indian government, as per an IMF statement. And Bloomberg has reported that India is willing to propose zero tariffs on US steel, auto components and pharma imports in a bid to thwart the retaliatory tariffs. And on the first day as markets opened after Donald Trump's announcement on tariffs up to 100% on movies not made in the United States, US stocks trade lower. Major companies taking a beating include Netflix, Amazon and Apple. And Maruti Suzuki's market share has fallen below the 40% mark for the month of April 2025. And even as Maruti Suzuki's share falls below 40%, the race for number 2 heats up as Tata Motors continues to stay in the number 3 position, but Mahindra & Mahindra overtakes Hyundai to the number 2 slot, pushing Hyundai India Motor Limited to the number 4 position in market share. Staying with the auto sector, ATHER Energy stocks are to be listed on Indian stock exchanges at 10 a.m. this morning. Well, these are the big stories that we're tracking for you this Tuesday morning. But first, to begin with, the Ministry of Home Affairs has directed several states in India to conduct comprehensive mock drills tomorrow, May 7th, to strengthen civil defense preparedness in the event of a hostile attack. Now, the planned measures include operationalization of air raid warning sirens, training of civilians and students to protect civil defense protocols, implementation of crash blackout procedures, and early camouflaging of critical infrastructure and installations. Now, additionally, evacuation plans are to be updated and rehearsed to ensure swift and coordinated response during emergencies. This as per government sources to News 9. Now, the Ministry of Home Affairs has issued nationwide advisory to several states to conduct these civil defense mock drills on May 7th, aimed at preparing for emergency situations, especially those involving hostile attacks. Now, these mock drills are aimed at testing both response time and coordination between security agencies, local authorities and the general public in the event of an actual emergency. Now, the Civil Defense Act, under which the outcome of these exercises will take shape, will be enacted under the Parliament in May 1968. That's the first time that this act was enacted. The act defines measures to protect people during and entails constitutions of a civil defense corps. The appointment of a director of civil defense is part of the act, and there are penalties for non-compliance as well. The orders under this act are not under court purview and the provisions do not apply to the armed forces. Now, some of the possible rules that could potentially come into effect during a hostile attack may include prohibiting and regulating traffic. There could also be curfew between specified hours. In addition to that, there's control of roads, waterways and water supply. Plus, there's the control of light and sound during an emergency and preventing and controlling the use of uniforms. In addition to that, the government could also be looking at prohibiting or regulating the use of recording equipment and prohibiting printing and publishing of newspapers, books, and also curtail powers of the state governments. But do remember, May 7th is just a mock drill and its objectives seem to be fairly clear. Now, number one, the government wants to assess the effectiveness of air raid warning systems, plus operationalize radio links with the Indian Air Force. The government would want to test functionality of control rooms, train civilians and students, provision crash blackout measures, test the efficiency of camouflaging of vital installations, and also verify response of civil defense services and evaluate evacuation plan preparedness. The government sources say the drills are part of a broader effort to enhance national preparedness in light of evolving global threats. Now, border tensions and military escalation could mar Pakistan's access to external funding and also add pressure to its foreign exchange reserves that are already well below the required limit to meet its external debt payment, which needs in the next few years. Now, it's not us saying this. These observations have come from global ratings agency firm Moody's yesterday. Now, Pakistan's failed and bleeding economy already has lesser money than it needs to repay its huge external debt. The economic cost of a war with India will make the situation worse for Pakistan. Remember, Pakistan's economy has been failing to recover from a series of blows that started first with the COVID-19 pandemic, followed by the inflation jolt after Russia attacked Ukraine 3 years ago. And the army-controlled flawed democracy continues to reel under political turmoil. Now, as per Moody's, India continues to be the world's fastest growing major economy in the same last 5 years as Pakistan's economy sank. Remember, Pakistan owes over $131 billion to foreign lenders. It has already borrowed over $3 billion from the International Monetary Fund in each of the last 2 financial years and is hoping to get another $7 billion bailout from the IMF later this week. Now, the country's current reserve of foreign exchange is just about enough to cover a little over 3 months of its import bills. Meanwhile, former World Bank India representative and ex-Niti Aayog chief Parameswaran Iyer is taking over as India's executive director at the International Monetary Fund after KV Subramanian's ouster late last week. Now, India's agenda at the May 9th IMF meet must be about Pakistan's economic isolation by global leaders. For IMF, it is an opportunity to make an explicit statement against terror and for a change not sustain a failed economic state. Now, here's a News 990 word edit this morning. Take a minute to read it on your LinkedIn feeds and circulate it if you agree with News 9's stand. We say no bailout for nucleus of terrorism. All eyes on Parameswaran Iyer as he takes charge as India Executive Director at the International Monetary Fund. The timing is crucial. India will bat against the $7 billion Pakistan bailout package this week. Iyer must play hardball in thwarting financial support to our terrorist harboring neighbor. Diplomacy and tact will be stress tested as India pushes to corner Pakistan, getting the world to punish Pakistan for its complicit role in global terrorism and running a failed economy must become New Delhi's sustained campaign against Islamabad. Well, that's the News 990 word edit this morning. Take a look at it on your social media feed. But staying with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF yesterday said that the termination of services of India Executive Director KV Subramanian was a decision taken by the Indian government. The government of India has terminated services of Subramanian 6 months ahead of his 3-year tenure, which was scheduled to end later this year. The termination was effective April 30th, 2025. However, reasons for Subramanian's exit have not been officially announced as yet. Now, according to a PTI report citing sources, concerns were raised over an alleged impropriety relating to the promotion and publicity of Subramanian's latest book, India at 100, Envisioning Tomorrow's Economic Powerhouse. It is alleged that Subramanian used his official position to pressurize some institutions to purchase his book. Subramanian was appointed as the Executive Director, India at the IMF with effect from November 1st, 2022 for a period of 3 years. Now, prior to this, remember, KV Subramanian has served as the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India. India is a 4-country constituency along with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Bhutan as members. Parmeswaran Iyer is now the India Executive Director at the International Monetary Fund. And in a major development aimed at boosting trade talks with the United States, India has reportedly offered to impose zero tariffs on key American exports to India. These include steel, pharmaceuticals and auto components. The offer, made during an April visit by Indian trade officials to Washington, is part of a broader push to seal a bilateral trade deal, as per a report by Bloomberg. The move comes in response to US President Donald Trump's recent tariff threats on Indian goods, measures he paused on April 9th in a bid to push forward negotiations. Now, US Vice President J.D. Vance has expressed hope, saying talks with India are progressing well and could yield one of the first deals under the new tariff regime. But with Trump's July 9th deadline for implementing the paused tariffs fast approaching, no agreement has yet been finalized. Meanwhile, Trump, speaking aboard Air Force One, said announcements could come as early as this week, adding, "At the end of this, I'll set my own deals. They don't set the deal." And staying with Trump, tariffs, and especially those that he imposed on films not made in the United States. Well, Wall Street paused its rally on Monday, snapping the S&P 500's longest winning streak in 2 decades. Investors took a cautious stance after US President Donald Trump announced new tariffs just days before a key Federal Reserve decision on interest rates. The Dow slipped 0.25%, the S&P 500 lost 0.6, while the Nasdaq dropped about 0.75%. Take a look.
U.S. stocks fell across the board Monday, with the S&P 500 snapping its longest streak of gains in 20 years. The Dow slipped 0.25%, while the S&P 500 dropped 0.6, and the Nasdaq declined about 0.75%. On Sunday, President Donald Trump announced a 100% tariff on movies produced outside the U.S., but provided no details on how such levies would be implemented. Netflix fell to snap an 11-session winning streak, while Amazon.com and Paramount Global were also weaker. Stocks have been volatile since Trump announced his first round of tariffs on April 2nd, with the S&P 500 initially dropping nearly 15%, only to stabilize and climb for the last 9 straight sessions, its longest streak since 2004. Also Monday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Trump's tariff, tax cut, and deregulation agenda would work together to drive long-term investment to the U.S., adding markets could overcome any short-term turbulence. Summit Place Financial Advisors President Liz Miller says she continues to focus not on the talk, but on the data.
So far, we're following the hard data. We just got employment that continued to remain strong at the end of last week. We got ISM services today, which was stronger than expected. To the upside, though, it did show higher prices. We do know over the long term, measurably higher tariffs will lead to higher prices. Do those prices stay at the wholesale level, or do they push all the way down to the consumer? Those are the questions that we start trying to analyze broadly now, but we can't make firm conclusions until we really do see the final policies.
The Federal Reserve is scrutinizing the data as well and is expected to hold interest rates steady this week. Other stocks on the move included Class B shares of Berkshire Hathaway, which slid 5% after Warren Buffett said he will step down as CEO of the conglomerate. And Tyson Foods plunged nearly 8% after the meatpacker missed quarterly revenue expectations.
All right, from Wall Street, let's look at India's car street, the auto street. Well, car maker leader Maruti Suzuki India's share in the domestic passenger vehicle market fell below 40% in the month of April, while Mahindra & Mahindra emerged as the second largest player in the same month. This according to data released by the Federation of Auto Dealers Association. A long-time number 2 player, Hyundai Motor India, has been pushed to the 4th place with a market share of 12.47% in the month of April this year. Meanwhile, Tata Motors has maintained its 3rd place with a market share of 12.59%. Meanwhile, Mahindra & Mahindra has raced ahead with a share of 13.83% for the month of April. Now remember, in April 2025, total domestic passenger vehicle retail sales stood at 3,49,939. That's almost 3.5 lakh units, a growth of 1.5% from the same period last year. Maruti Suzuki India's retail sales stood at 1,38,000 odd units in the month of April with a market share of 39.44%. It commanded a 40.39% market share at the same time last year. The biggest gainer in April this year was Mahindra & Mahindra due to its robust SUV sales. Mahindra & Mahindra's retail sales stood at a little over 48,400 units with a market share of 13.83% in April 2025. Now, last year, it was the number 4 player with a little over 11% in market share. Hyundai Motor India clocked just 43,642 units last month with a market share of 12.47%, occupying the 4th place. Now, just last year, Hyundai had sold 49,200 plus units in the month of April with a market share as high as 14.29% when it was the 2nd largest player. Tata Motors has maintained its 3rd position with retail sales of 44,000 odd units and a market share of 12.6% in the month of April 2025. Well, time for a short break here on Morning Brief at 9. When we come back, we look at the Indian stock markets as they open this Tuesday morning after yesterday's streak of Sensex climbing almost 0.4%, while Nifty up 0.5%. That and other global stories we're tracking for you on Morning Brief at 9 after this short break.
Beyond better, the new Tiguan R-Line. Volkswagen.
I need expert performance. I need my carrier.
In a huge setback for bike taxi services in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu races ahead with 9.69% growth rate. India's fastest growing state this year. Good for Tamil Nadu. You may not be directly involved with what your son or daughter does, but your influence does work. My name is Sudha Sadanand. Welcome to the South Indian.
Every brand tells a story. And they are the storytellers, the Sutradhars. They present a brand with band, baja and barat to you. They are the Brandwalas.
Is life transactional by any chance?
Of course. Everything in the creation affects everything else.
You are not only an actor, you are an activist.
Through my cinema, I've tried to always project what I really felt.
You tried to make women look beautiful for themselves.
The message to women was, let the spotlight of your life be on you.
You are fiercely competitive in nature. but you come across as a typical good boy that every mother would like to have.
But it doesn't mean you're not raging inside. Or equally euphoric.
You have donned many hats, but who is Kiran Rao?
I am a speck and I am not even a blink in time.
From being somebody to becoming nobody is the first step in enlightenment.
Even now, I don't think of myself as a brand.
You still move ahead with your beliefs.
Winning the game is what's going to make this decision right.
It's a kind of a barometer that you have internally.
It was lovely talking to Barun.
It was great fun, and I think you'll find it fun to watch.
I found the discussion very thought-provoking.
As befits such a conversation, one goes back with more questions than answers.
He gave me a formula which I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, which is something that you'll have to watch the show for.
Watch Radico Presents Duologue with Barun Das, Season 3 at these times on News 9. News 9, English News, as it should be.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Let's quickly get you a mood check on Dalal Street this morning. Markets have opened just a few minutes back and it seems to be a pretty much flat trading day set up, at least in the early first few minutes of market open. Nifty 50 is up just about 0.1%. Meanwhile, Sensex absolutely flat, second decimal points. But the good news is that Sensex is holding above that 80,800 odd levels. Well, will it touch 81,000 today is something that we will, of course, wait and watch for. Meanwhile, better news coming in from the small cap and mid cap space. The Nifty small cap index is up about 0.5 percentage point this morning. There seems to be some volatility. India Wix is now holding at about 18.53 points or so. Let's look at the Nifty 50 heat map and try and make sense of which are the stocks in action and which are the sectors that should be on your radar as you approach your investing strategy. This is a Nifty 50 heat map. Well, remember, Kotak Mahindra Bank had slipped almost 6% in trade yesterday after it announced its Q4 results, which were nowhere close to what the street was expecting. This morning also a little bit of pressure building on Kotak Mahindra Bank. The stock is down about 0.4 percentage point. Meanwhile, Reliance is taking a large beating today. Shares are down almost 0.7% or so in early trade. Mixed cues coming in from the auto sector. Maruti Suzuki is down about 0.2%. This comes perhaps on the back of the auto data released by FADA yesterday, which has shown that Maruti Suzuki has slipped from its 40% market share. Meanwhile, Mahindra & Mahindra, which has raised to the number 2 position in the Indian auto market, its shares are up about 3% or so in early trade this morning. This also comes on the back of the quarterly announcement of results by Mahindra & Mahindra, which saw a 25% increase in its net revenue. Tata Motors, meanwhile, continues to be down this morning, under pressure, down about 0.6% or so. But data on Tata Motors reaffirming that the company has maintained its number 3 position in India's market share for passenger vehicles. And staying with the stock markets, the initial public offering of ATHER Energy opened for subscription on April 28th and ended on April 30th. The IPO has been subscribed 1.5 times overall, getting bids for 76.7 million shares against the 51.1 million shares that were on offer during the initial public offering. The retail category was fully subscribed with 1.9 times subscription, while the nil NII was subscribed 0.7 times. The qualified institutional buyers or QIB category received a 1.76 times subscription. The price of the 2981 crore rupee ATHER Energy IPO was fixed in the range of 304 to 321 rupees per share. Remember, ATHER Energy is scheduled to list on the Indian stock markets on the Indian exchanges today, starting 10 a.m. With this oversubscription, there seems to be a good chance that the share price, the listing price, would exceed the subscription price. But of course, we will follow those details for you and bring them to you. And let's look at some of the other global stories that we are following for you this Tuesday morning. Let's begin with the Global 9 at 9. Warren Buffett steps down as Berkshire Hathaway CEO after 6 decades, will remain chairman as Greg Abel takes over as the CEO. US stocks fall as S&P 500 snaps 20-year winning streak. Netflix tumbles and uncertainty grows over Trump's 100% foreign movie tariff ahead of the critical Fed decision. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to meet US President Donald Trump at White House amid rising trade tensions and US annexation threats. Trump prioritizes fair trade deal with China, criticizes former US President Richard Nixon's China relations and confirms no meeting with Xi Jinping this week. US crude hits 4-year low as OPEC Plus agrees to second consecutive production hike, adding 800,000 barrels per day amid recession fears and rising tariffs. Ford Motor Company beats Q1 expectations but suspends 2025 financial guidance amid $2.5 billion tariff impact, citing supply chain risks and potential tariff increases. Barbie and Hot Wheels parent Mattel withdraws annual forecast and plans US price hikes as Donald Trump tariffs drive up input costs and affect holiday sales outlook. Meanwhile, European Union and France unveil a $500 million Euro research fund to attract scientists amid Trump's crackdown on US universities and federal funding cuts. And Shah Rukh Khan, Kiara Advani, Daljit Dosanjh and other Bollywood celebs shine and met Gala 2025 with their glamorous debuts. Following Warren Buffett's retirement announcement over the weekend, Berkshire Hathaway confirmed on Monday that the 94-year-old investing legend will step down as CEO but remain chairman of the board. Vice Chairman Greg Abel will take over as the chief executive. Berkshire shares fell as much as 6.8% in Monday trading after this announcement. Take a look.
Buffett is giving up one Berkshire Hathaway job but holding on to another. The conglomerate said Monday the 94-year-old legendary investor will stay on as chairman after Vice Chairman Greg Abel takes over as CEO. The Berkshire board on Sunday approved Abel's promotion, which takes effect January 1st of next year. Berkshire's shares fell as much as 6.8% in Monday trading after Buffett announced on Saturday that he would step down as the company's boss, ending 6 decades at the helm. Although Abel's expected ascension has been known for 4 years, the announcement at Berkshire's annual meeting in Omaha, Nebraska was a surprise. It overshadowed Berkshire's first quarter results, where insurance losses tied to wildfires caused operating profit to fall short of analyst forecasts. Berkshire has 189 businesses, such as Geico Insurance, the BNSF Railroad, Dairy Queen, and See's Candies, and a huge stock portfolio including Apple. The company's stock price has reflected Buffett's success, posting annualized returns that nearly doubled the Standard & Poor's 500 index. Abel and most of the board had not known of Buffett's announcement in advance. Buffett said he had given a heads up to his children Howard and Susie, who are directors.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney arrived in the United States on Monday for a high-stakes meeting with Donald Trump as the American president continues his trade war and annexation threats against Canada. The White House visit comes just weeks after Carney led the Liberals to their 4th consecutive election victory. Now, just before Mark Carney's visit to the US, President Donald Trump said that he was unsure why the Canadian Prime Minister was coming to see him on Tuesday, but said, and I quote, "I guess he wants to make a deal," unquote. Listen in.
I don't know, he's coming to see me. I'm not sure what he wants to see me about, but I guess he wants to make a deal. Everybody does. They all want to make a deal because we have something that they all want. We have something that they all want. China wants to make a deal very badly. You see what's happening to China. China's being decimated, and I don't want that to happen. but they have to make a fair deal. We were losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year. We were losing think of it, on our trade policies with Biden. We're losing $5 billion a day. I think Josh, as a great businessman, would not let that happen too long, right? How many groups could lose $5 billion a day? If you lose $5 billion one day, that's the end of that company, right? You're fired. He says, you're fired. Get out of here. So we essentially did that, and we have it down to a very low number. We're doing really well.
Staying with Donald Trump, the U.S. president also said that the U.S. was meeting with many countries, including China, on trade deals, and his main priority was China. With China was to secure a fair trade deal. He further said that he has no plans to speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping this week, but U.S. officials were speaking with Chinese officials about different things. Listen in.
Every country, almost without fail, friend and foe, has been ripping us off for years. So we're meeting with almost all of them, including China. And at the end, I'm setting the deal. They keep saying, when are you going to, this is not like a big deal that's going to be signed. In some cases, we'll sign. But we don't have to have signed. I'm going to be setting the deal. I'll be setting a tariff. Well, you know, I want a fair deal with China, but China's been ripping us off for many years, so maybe something should be thought about, you know, a little bit of retribution. China's been ripping us off for many years, ever since they started. To me, I think it was the worst thing that Richard Nixon ever did. And it was Nixon, you know, he's the one that got it started.
U.S. crude oil futures fell sharply on Monday, dropping about 2% to close at their lowest levels in 4 years after OPEC Plus agreed a consecutive second production hike. U.S. crude lost 2%, settling at a little over $57 per barrel, the lowest since February 2021. Meanwhile, global benchmark Brent crude fell 1.7%, closing at a little over $60 a barrel. Oil prices have now fallen by about 20% this year. The decision by OPEC Plus, led by Saudi Arabia, to increase production by 411,000 barrels per day in June comes 1 month after a similar hike. This makes nearly 800,000 additional barrels per day coming to the market in just about 2 months. The oil market also faces pressure from fears of potential recession amid U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff hikes, which could reduce demand even as OPEC Plus ramps up its oil supplies. And staying back with the U.S., Ford Motor Company beat Wall Street's expectations for the first quarter, but took a cautious approach with its 2025 financial guidance, suspending it amid an anticipated $2.5 billion impact from President Donald Trump's tariffs this year. The automaker said it plans to counterbalance $1 billion of those costs through remedial action, volume growth and price strategies, leaving a total impact of $1.5 billion for the year 2025. Ford pointed to near-term risks, including potential supply chain disruptions and the possibility of future or increased tariffs, as key reasons for pulling its guidance. Interestingly, the tariff impact for Ford is expected to be smaller than General Motors' $4 to $5 billion forecast, as Ford imports fewer vehicles than its rival. GM, which lowered its 2025 guidance last week, said it plans to offset at least 30% of these costs. Well, Barbie and Hot Wheels parent Mattel has withdrawn its annual financial forecast, citing uncertainty from U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. The company said it would raise prices on some U.S. products to counter rising input costs. Mattel shares fell about 2% in extended trading and are down roughly 8% for the year. The toy maker pointed to a volatile macroeconomic environment and evolving U.S. tariffs, saying it's now difficult to predict consumer spending and domestic sales for the remainder of the year, including the critical holiday season. The announcement comes amid an escalating trade war as the U.S. and China have each imposed exceeding 100% tariffs on one another's goods, further disrupting global supply chains. The European Union and France are stepping in to woo top scientific talent away from the United States. They announced a 500 million euros in incentives aimed at attracting researchers to Europe. capitalizing on growing tensions between US President Donald Trump and the American academic community. Remember, since taking over, Trump has frozen federal research funding, revoked international student visas, and launched investigations into major US universities.
In an effort to lure scientists to Europe, France and the European Union on Monday announced €500 million worth of incentives for researchers. The pledge comes amid U.S. President Donald Trump's clashes with top U.S. universities. Here's EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
Science is an investment, and we need to offer the right incentives. This is why I can announce that we will put forward a new €500 million package for 2025 to 2027 to make Europe a magnet for researchers.
Officials said the money would fund research projects and help universities cover the cost of bringing foreign scientists over to help run them. Trump has targeted U.S. universities since taking office in January by freezing federal funding, launching investigations, revoking international students' visas, and making other demands. Last week, he said he will revoke Harvard University's tax-exempt status, a move that Harvard said would be an unlawful misuse of the U.S. tax code. Speaking alongside von der Leyen on Monday, French President Emmanuel Macron had this to say.
Personne ne pouvait penser que cette très grande démocratie du monde, dont le modèle économique...
Nobody could have thought that that very great democracy whose economic model relies so much on free science, on innovation, and on its ability over the last 3 decades to innovate more than Europeans and transmitted this innovation more widely, would make such an error. But that's where we are.
But with European universities far less wealthy than their U.S. peers, it remains to be seen if they can bridge the funding gap that is needed to attract top U.S. researchers.
US President Donald Trump has announced plans to reopen the infamous Alcatraz prison located in San Francisco Bay. Trump said he's directed the Bureau of Prisons to rebuild and reopen the facility to house what he called America's most ruthless and violent offenders. The prison, once home to some of the most infamous criminals in US history, was shut down in 1963 due to high operating costs, largely resulting from its isolated island location. Take a look.
U.S. President Donald Trump has called for the reopening and expansion of the infamous prison Alcatraz. In a post on Truth Social Sunday, he suggested housing America's most ruthless and violent offenders there, saying, "When we were a more serious nation in times past, we did not hesitate to lock up the most dangerous criminals and keep them far away from anyone they could harm." He went on to say that he is directing the Bureau of Prisons, the Department of Justice, FBI, and Homeland Security to substantially enlarge and reopen the prison. The federal prison at Alcatraz housed notorious U.S. criminals, such as Al Capone, before it closed in 1963. It was billed as America's most secure prison, given the island location, frigid waters, and strong currents. It closed because it was too expensive to continue operating, according to the Federal Bureau of Prisons website, in large part due to its island location. It is now one of San Francisco's most popular tourist destinations. Former House Speaker and California Democrat Nancy Pelosi downplayed the Republican president's plan on X, writing, "Alcatraz closed as a federal penitentiary more than 60 years ago. The president's proposal is not a serious one." As he returned to the White House from Florida, President Trump told reporters that reopening the prison was just an idea I've had and decided to act on. "It's a symbol of law and order," he said.
And moving on now, Catholic Church cardinals attended the final morning mass for late Pope Francis just days before gathering in conclave to elect his successor. According to an ancient customs, special celebrations in suffrage of the deceased pontiff take place for 9 consecutive days, which are therefore called Novandale. French Cardinal Dominique Memberti led the prayer for the last day of Novandale, which took place in St. Peter's Basilica in the presence of High prelates and other members. Around 133 cardinals under the age of 80 will enter the Sistine Chapel on May 7th to vote for the next leader of the 1.4 billion member church, who will be the 267th pontiff since St. Peter. And fashion's biggest night is finally here, the Met Gala. The steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art were transformed into a stunning fusion of bold heritage and elegance as the 2025 Met Gala unfolded like no other. Themed super fine, tailoring black style, this year's fashion spectacle not only celebrated sartorial brilliance but also made a powerful cultural statement. Returning for the third consecutive year, the Kerala-based designer house Neat by Extra Weave returned to fashion's biggest stage, supplying the eco-conscious and biodegradable carpet. As celebrities from around the world made their glamorous entrances, some of the most anticipated debuts this year, including Hollywood megastar Shah Rukh Khan, who graced the Met for the first time. Global icons Priyanka Chopra Jonas and Nick Jonas, as well as stars like Kiara Advani, Daljit Dosanjh and fashion designer Manish Malhotra, all brought their A-game in stunning outfits. Into another short break, but coming up on the other side of the break, an exclusive News 9 conversation with MobiQuick's Upasana Taku. We will bring you that exclusive conversation after this short break.
वक़्फ़ में एक भी नॉन मुस्लिम नहीं आएगा.
Waqf bill was passed by Rajya Sabha. Opposition parties had challenged the legislation in the Supreme Court. What is the biggest challenge of Amit Shah in Tamil Nadu? Can Mohammad Yunus be trusted because he met Prime Minister Modi? World will come to know, India will come to know who were his handlers. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee met thousands of teachers and educators. Tharoor said that it took 21 months for Bharatiya Janata Party to impose president rule in the state.
Businesses are primarily in India known by their owners.
When you start a business, you don't realize how much you're putting the entire family at risk.
The trust is a big element.
And a typical symbol of trust is usually a banyan tree. And I used to, in my early days, wonder that how will a young company look like a banyan tree?
When you brought in this beauty product, Nykaa, you tried to make women look beautiful for themselves.
It's a message to women. Let the spotlight of your life be on you. And for that, we wanted her to be as confident as she wants.
India desperately needs that shift in mindset where women would be leading from the front.
They're risk takers and they do take open-ended risk, and a belief in yourself that you don't allow others to destabilize you and you keep pursuing your path.
Watch Radico Presents Duologue with PREPAREDNESS Season 3 featuring Falguni Nair at these times on News 9. News 9, English news as it should be.
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold, is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
This is Morning Brief at 9. Digital financial services platform MobiKwik is all set to turn 16. Having turned profitable last year, MobiKwik recently listed on the Indian bourses and is now planning to expand its footprint in Tier 3 and Tier 4 cities. Its subsidiary ZacPay received regulatory approval from the Reserve Bank of India to operate as an online payment aggregator just last week. The move is expected to bolster MobiKwik's presence in the digital payment space. Newsline's Shweta Kothari caught up with Upasana Thakur, the co-founder and CFO of MobiKwik, to understand their growth plans and future prospects. We will leave you with that exclusive conversation.
The journey has been nothing but exciting. I would compare it to nothing less than a hike trying to climb a large mountain, so to speak. I think there were lots of interesting moments where I almost thought the company was gonna shut down, but then there were those moments of glimpses of hope that brought us back together and kept us going. So it's been a nice journey, up and down, but very adventurous. And I can tell you by experience that doing a startup in FinTech India is not for the faint-hearted.
I'm sure it's not. You know, it's a very low margin and a very competitive industry. So I have to ask you, we are here at the Thai India Internet Day and you talked about financial innovations, FinTech innovations. What according to you have been the biggest FinTech innovations in the last 1 year, which are going to give you an edge over your competitors? As I mentioned, you've recently completed 15 years and you've also been listed now. What, according to you, would be your areas of thrust and focus as far as innovation is concerned?
So see, we continue to have digital payments as a foundation of our business, and that's the business on which we've acquired more than 170 million users and also 5 million merchants who accept payments via MobiKwik. Then we also have our B2B payments business and our cross-sell of financial products, whether it's credit products or investing products. But when you ask me, what is that one thing that has given you the lift? I want to say that what has happened in the last 1 year is that UPI has become interoperable, and so wallet is now available on the UPI rails via interoperability, and we have a very interesting product for that called Pocket UPI. And what it means?
How's Pocket UPI doing?
Exceedingly well. Basically, Pocket UPI is pay on the UPI network, scan any QR code. It could be my competitor's QR code, and you can pay there using your wallet. And you might ask, why should I do that? The reason you should do that is that you do not want to enter your bank password or PIN every time you are making a 50 rupee, 200 rupee transaction, because every time you do that, there could be a security concern to your bank. The second thing is that you have cluttered bank statements. All of us have, with so many small value transactions. So we do believe that from security perspective, user experience perspective, and also just convenience perspective, it's far simpler to do your daily life transactions using a wallet.
Right.
And that product we call Pocket UPI, and it has been a fantastic opportunity.
Is that your best product or most loved product?
It is the most loved product, yeah.
All right. I also have to ask you, you mentioned that you have about 4.5 million merchants, about 170 million users, and on top of that, your revenues have tripled to 890 crores rupees as of 2024. I know we're not going to talk about numbers so far, but how's the business looking like, given that it's very competitive these days?
So see, it's always been competitive. It's not as if that, payments or fintech has become competitive in the last 2 or 3 years. Ever since we started, many of our competitors also started in the same time frame. So it's been kind of hyper competitive for more than 10 years now, and we've learned to live and breathe and grow in that environment, so to speak. So I think competition doesn't bother me because the market opportunity is still so large. Everything said and done, with the revolution that UPI has brought about, even today only 500 million Indians are transacting digitally. So there's still another 500 million left to conquer, so to speak. all other financial products are much behind in terms of penetration in the Indian user base. So I don't think that that's such a large problem. I think what is important is that which are the product lines where we as a company have something amazing to offer to the customer and where we can succeed and grow despite the regulatory guardrails, despite the hyper competition, and an opportunity to be profitable. Because we are a listed company and we take that responsibility very seriously, and we are working hard to achieve profitability with high growth, and that's not easy to do.
Absolutely, not easy at all. In fact, you recently also received your RBI nod for online aggregator license. Your subsidiary ZAARPay did. What's the growth prospect there? What are you hoping to achieve?
So ZAARPay is our payment gateway business. I had started that business actually 10 years ago, and that business did really well right up to COVID. During COVID, a new license was introduced for this business, and we didn't get it in the first go. We just got the final approval 24 hours ago, and the in-principle approval we had received from RBI about a year ago. And basically this business enables us to accept all kinds of payments for any online business.
Right.
So for example, if you were to start, let's say, your online fashion company, while you will create your products, in the end you will need a checkout where a customer can pay via credit card, debit card, UPI, wallet, EMI, multiple 100+ payment methods. That entire product which powers payments for any e-commerce business is called payment gateway.
Right.
And that's the license that we have received. It's a very small business for us right now. It is a wholly owned subsidiary, and with this license in place and some very interesting innovative products that we've built in the last 1 year, I think the moon is the limit for the growth of this business. It's still a baby, and there's a huge runway for growth.
And you mentioned there is a huge runway for growth for fintech space at large, and I read you recently somewhere said that it's the future growth prospect in tier 2, tier 3 cities that will drive growth for you.
Absolutely. So see, what has happened is that in the last 5 to 8 years, most of our large cities, metros, most of the users there have already heard about payment companies and are using one or the other apps for their daily life payments. So while there might be still some users who have not adopted digital payments, you might say that majority of the users have. Where people have a bank account, they have a smartphone, but till now they had not started paying digitally. And the first time they start, making any payment digital is when they realize, "Arey, ye to itna easy tha. Now I can do this also digitally. I can do that also digitally." So yeah, I do believe that larger growth is now coming from smaller markets where people also see benefit of using digital.
So, but when you say larger growth in terms of a number of users, not so much the ticket price, because in such cases in tier 2, tier 3 or even tier 4 cities, the ticket size for transactions is relatively small.
True, the ticket sizes may be small, but the ticket sizes will grow over a period of time, right? Okay. First you will start with one mobile recharge, then you will do an electricity bill payment, then you will start paying for kirana, and then you will probably order something on e-commerce apps. So that is sort of how the journey progresses. Okay. But so there are two things. One is an active existing user base where the number of transactions are increasing and their monthly spend on our platform is increasing. The second thing is, where are the new users coming from and how many new users are coming in, and how do you get them to start transacting more and more digitally instead of cash. So that is what I meant. Larger growth in terms of users, new users.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, I think news cycles every time there is a negative news on a startup. For example, recently on Gensol, tend to in a way dent startup and the startup community, and also perhaps investors who become a little more varied today. Is that something that you're also cautious about? Perhaps not repeating the mistakes of what a lot of investors did, trying to really put their money behind companies who they think have a lot of potential, but then suddenly go bust. And I think it's a cautious tale there.
No, absolutely. But I think that I would urge both the press as well as the investors, to not paint everyone with the same brush. Because I'll tell you a simple example. We are sitting here, in Delhi NCR in Gurgaon, And while you will imagine most people here at the conference are well-meaning and trying to network and develop their businesses and do their work, but are we saying that the city is so safe that there's no crime happening? There is crime happening, right? So for good actors, enough good actors, there will always be some bad actors. Some people will be stealing while we are sitting here and talking. Some people will be doing murders and whatnot. I think the same thing applies in the business world also. I would say that while a few bad apples will come out, let us not use that to color the entire ecosystem, because believe me, if I've met 100 founders here today, there are many founders who are continuously sacrificing. I just met a founder who's been building for 10 years and he has not taken a pay raise in the last 3 years, even though he has raised substantial amount of money in his company, and he has never done a secondary either. And I would say that many more examples continue to exist. And so therefore I would say that while it's important that we focus on governance while building out, and investors will of course pay attention to that, but let it not be the case that 1, 2 or even 5 bad cases become the lens with which we are looking at thousands of companies and founders.
So perhaps a Gensol and a BlueSmart should not be a case study in how startups are to be perceived in future. But thank you very much, Upasana Thapar. Thank you for taking time out for speaking with us.
Thank you. It's all my pleasure.
Light, camera, and action. Kick back, relax, grab your favorite snack because News 9 is here with your weekend dose of entertainment. It's time to take a deeper dive into the buzzworthy happenings of the entertainment world. From celebrity gossips to exclusive conversations, from nostalgic moments